Greetings, gentlemen. I don't usually talk about articles, and I don't usually talk about feminists, but one of my subscribers sent me a link to a German article written by a German feminist affiliated with the German magazine Emma. And those of you who don't know, Emma is a German feminist screed filled with the usual feminist bullshit. The reason why I'm making this video, well, there are two reasons. One reason is it's just the suggestions made in this article are just so absurd that probably need addressing, and the consequences of those suggestions. I want to cover that as well. Those are the two reasons. The article is in German, and so I will be summarizing the contents. I'm not making anything up. If you can read German, I'll be, of course, posting a link to the article in the low bar, and you can also read the comments people made, and the comments were pretty sensible overall. Now, many of you know that not too long ago, there was a plane crash in the French Alps. It turns out it wasn't an accident. A pilot who was suffering from mental illness took his own life as well as the lives of everyone else on board. Sort of a suicide plane crash, if you will. Incidentally, I'm flying with the same airline later this month, so let's hope that the pilot doesn't have suicidal intentions. But in light of this, in light of what happened, Lufthansa, which is this German Wings is actually a subsidiary of Lufthansa, has decided to implement the same rules that have been present in the United States for aviation for decades. That is, you have to have two people in the cockpit. Up until now, that wasn't the case in Germany, but they're going to implement it now. But this feminist claims that doesn't go far enough. Given the fact that most suicides are male, she claims, and most violent rampages are committed by males, there should be what they call the Frauenquote. Frauenquote just means women's quota. And there should be a Frauenquote for pilots as well. This all comes as no surprise to anyone probably, but in particular, in light of some things that have been implemented in Germany recently. One thing that's quite conspicuous is that all major companies are now required, I believe, to have a third of their supervisory boards and committees, a third of them have to be women, right? It's a legal requirement now. And so she suggests, of course, no, we'll put, if there were more women pilots, we'd have fewer of these sorts of incidences. Now, she also cites that 94% of the pilots working for Lufthansa are, go figure, male. There are obvious problems with her assertions. The first problem is, most women don't become pilots. It's possible that some women have the capacity to become pilots, and I admit I don't know a lot about aviation, but from what I do understand, becoming a pilot, commercial or otherwise, is a very, very rigorous and demanding path to walk. Most men can't do it, and still fewer women can do it. I certainly couldn't become a pilot. I lack the acumen in that realm, and I have no problems admitting that. So the idea that you could sort of artificially implement a quota system for a profession that is perhaps one of the most rigorous in the world, and more importantly, carries with it some of the greatest responsibility you could have. I mean, if you're on a big Airbus, for example, you're responsible for the lives of hundreds of people. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. If you're on a transatlantic flight or flying from the penal colony to some other destination, such as North America, I mean, for an entire day in some cases, you have the lives of hundreds of people in your hands. And so the idea of a women's quota here is even more absurd. And this brings up another point, or a more relevant point I wanted to mention. I remember a couple of years back, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the famous physicist popularizer of science and head of the Hayden Planetarium in New York. Really nice planetarium. If you've never been there or haven't ever visited, check it out. Part of the Museum of Natural History. Fond childhood memories. He mentioned, it was about 10 years ago, that in respects to religious lunacy and anti-evolution and what have you, that, yeah, these people have a voice and people listen to them with regards to anti-evolution and teaching intelligent design and science in general. But guys, don't worry. People in the government want things to get done. Now, what did he mean by that? The reality is, people, even if they pay lip service to the nonsense, say in the case of religious delusion, they pay lip service to this stuff, they want things to get done. If it's not real science, they're not going to fund it, they're not going to support it. Full stop. And I think the same thing applies to this sort of nonsense with women's quotas and cockpits and as pilots. Most people can't become pilots. The few people who can become pilots overwhelmingly tend to be men, and still fewer women. And because that's such a difficult profession, because it has so much responsibility that comes with it, no one's ever really going to take a requirement for women quotas in aviation seriously. And when the stakes are high, we needn't worry. I mean, there's a reason why, as much as women and feminists whinge and complain about glass ceilings and a lack of female representation in XYZ sector, you don't hear feminists clamoring about the lack of female trauma surgeons or the lack of female neuro and cardiac surgeons. There's a reason. Once again, extremely demanding professions. Most human beings can't compete in. Most human beings can't do. I couldn't. And when they can do it, they overwhelmingly tend to be male and not female. And this is once again because people's lives are on the line. I mean, be completely different professions, mind you, but still, if you're a pilot flying over vast distances, you have a lot of people's lives in the palm of your hands, quite literally. The same on an individual basis could be said for a trauma surgeon, a cardiac surgeon, a neurosurgeon, or really anyone engaging in dangerous surgical work, medicine. There is a reason why you don't hear women usually, this is an exception, clamoring and whinging and bitching about stuff like that. When the stakes are high, we needn't worry. You're never going to hear, this is a prediction as well as a hypothesis, feminists complaining about a lack of female representation in any of the things that actually matter. That is, things that have where you have to take responsibility for people's lives directly. Surgeons, pilots, things of that nature. Never mind all the really difficult and dangerous work that goes without saying women don't want to do. I mean, there's no rallying to get a woman's quota in for Alaskan the fisherman's trade off the coast of Alaska, or working in the canals and sewer systems of New York, or what have you. You're not going to hear that. That's because it's unpleasant. They don't want to do that. But for those professions that aren't as dangerous per se, or rather as dirty in some cases, such as sewer work, there is the prestige factor. Women want in on the prestige, but as I said, when the stakes are high, we needn't worry. You don't have to worry about things such as, we need quotas for fucking pilots, because quite frankly, most human beings lack the aptitude, and when the aptitude is present, it's going to be overwhelmingly male, for all the reasons we've talked about in the past. Men have better spatial awareness, they tend to be better with mechanical stuff, and they're willing to take risks and responsibility that women are not. And frankly speaking, I'm sure there are a few exceptions, but generally speaking, I don't think this is going to change. I'm going to be posting the link in low bar to statistics regarding the amount of pilots that have data on pilots that have been gathered over the past few decades in the United States, and you'll see not much has really changed. And of course, it's cited there that women don't receive the emotional support they need. These are dangerous, difficult jobs, and very few people can do them. Most men can't become professional pilots. You think a few women who are naturally less inclined to that sort of thing are going to be equally capable of doing that? But I'm not worried about things like women's quotas or demands for quotas in specific areas of medicine. For the most part, these are the domains of men and will probably always remain majority men for obvious reasons we all know about by now. When the stakes are high, we needn't worry. The same applies to pseudoscience, and it applies to the nonsense that feminists spout. So this is kind of just a silly article that we can all laugh about, and the contents are equally silly because no matter what she says, people care about profit margins, and when their profit margins are going to be damaged by incompetence, they're not going to risk that. So we're not going to see some sort of grave change in the gender ratios of, say, Lufthansa, any more than we're going to see a grave change in the gender ratios of neurosurgeons. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, I don't normally cover stuff like this, but I thought it was amusing, and I wanted to point out that one important fact, that when the stakes are high, people take things seriously, and they're not going to take idiotic claims made by feminists seriously, just like they don't take idiotic claims made by religious people who don't know anything about science seriously. Same thing applies here. Anyway, so much in the works right now. Next day or two, the video on logical fallacies will be out, and some recent exchanges with some people have led me to want to make probably will be a very long, complex video on language as a natural phenomenon, which might be boring to some people, but it's going to dovetail and have some important implications for the study of the human being in general. And I don't know how long that's going to take, but I feel committed to making that video, and we could be looking at something of escape velocity proportions, but we'll see. Anyway, as always, gentlemen, thanks for watching, and yeah, feel free to leave comments and laugh about how silly some feminists are. Enjoy your weekend. Most of you, I believe, are having long weekends, which for someone who works at home is kind of irrelevant, such as myself, but hey, enjoy it anyway for the rest of you. Take care.